power. It seems everyone wants to have a piece of it. But what should one do once he has it? Use it for himself, use it for others, or make it use you? This is the dilemma in the anime movie Steamboy, which is said to be the most expensive Japanese anime film up until 2004 and took 10 years to make. The story begins in an alternate 19th century Europe that uses steam power in their machineries. A scientist named Lloyd Steam, together with his son Edward, discover a pure mineral water in Iceland, which they believe can be harnessed for an unlimited power supply. Later on, they make experiments on it in Alaska, but something goes horribly wrong during the demo phase in front of the investors, when Lloyd pushes the limits by increasing the pressure on the machine. Because of this, pipes blow up due to high pressure, resulting in Edward getting engulfed in freezing gases. The only thing left of the failed experiment is a spherical device. In Manchester, where Lloyd's grandson and Edward's son named Ray lives, steam is also being used in most machinery. However, in the factory where the boy works, the machine is acting up, so he does something dangerous in order to save it. Unfortunately, despite his self-sacrificing efforts, the ungrateful owner even scolds him, and cuts his and the other workers' pay for the damages on the machine. He runs into his friend while he's reading a poster about the Great Exhibition in London. They talk about what happened in the factory, and Ray shows him a brass valve he got because of the incident, which he thinks can still be used. On his way home, a group of kids bully him because of his inventor father and grandfather, so he uses the valve to hit one of them, scaring the others to run away. At home, Ray measures the valve in his room full of inventions, proving that being an inventor really runs in his blood. At dinner time, his childhood friends join them because of their parents being away at the moment. Ray's mother doesn't allow him to eat, as punishment for hitting one of the bullies. He tries to reason out to defend himself, but his mom doesn't want to hear of it. The next morning, they receive a heavy parcel while Ray is working on one of his inventions. In it is the spherical device left from the failed Alaskan experiment and its blueprint written by his grandfather. Just right after opening the parcel, two men knock on their door. They introduce themselves as Alfred and Jason from the O'Hara Foundation. Ray's mother thanks the two visitors for everything the foundation has done for their family. She lets them in, even mentioning the parcel which has just arrived. Ray, having read his grandpa's letter, refuses to give the sphere to them. One of the men searches the house for his grandfather, who arrives shortly. Lloyd orders his grandson not to give the contents of the parcel to the men he refers to as villains. Both sides insist on having the right to the device. His grandpa reveals that his son, Edward, died because of it. He tells Ray to take the device and the blueprint to Mr. Stevenson, while he and the men from the Foundation engage in a fight inside the house. One of the men sends a signal outside to get help from the other agents in pursuing Ray. They arrive on a tractor that smashes and destroys a part of the Steam's house. Ray escapes using his monowheel invention with the help of his friend, but the steam tractor chases after him, destroying anything in its path. Both vehicles got on the train track, right in front of the incoming train. Ray's monowheel gets sandwiched, but he manages to get out of it safely, though the blueprints in his shirt get blown away. An agent continues to pursue him, but a passenger named David helps the boy by taking control of the train. David pushes the tractor in front, making it veer away from the tracks and fall into the river. As the train comes to a halt, the agent chasing Ray falls off and escapes. Ray meets David and his boss, who hands him the blueprints caught by the wind. That man turns out to be Mr. Stevenson, the very man whom his grandfather wants him to give the device and blueprints to. Introducing himself, Stevenson realizes that Ray is the grandson of Lloyd, whom he is supposed to meet at Manchester. The enemy agents send a signal to the sky, but the train carries on anyway. In the coach, Stevenson enlightens Ray about the situation. However, before the boy can give the device to Stevenson, O'Hara agents arrive in a blimp, forcing their way into their train coach. They catch the boy and the device with a net to take him to London. Upon arriving there, he gets irritated as he meets an annoying girl about his age named Scarlett, the granddaughter of the chairman of the foundation, and Simon, the administrator. He calms down though when he sees his father, who is apparently still alive, though has turned into some sort of cyborg with a freakish hairstyle. Skipping dinner, Edward shows his son the tower, including one of the 3 steam balls which are vital to the project he's working on. Scarlett joins them, much to Ray's annoyance. At the top of the tower, they see where the London exhibition will be held. His father explains the importance of the steam tower, which was started by Ray's grandfather. With much passion, he tells him of his vision for the world using the power they've discovered. Convinced with father's vision, Ray helps him with the project. Meanwhile, Stevenson meets with a British Navy officer, warning him that O'Hara's Foundation has records of selling weapons of war to both sides before. Back in the tower, someone informs Edward of a leak. He orders Ray to check one of the valves, only to find his shirtless grandfather as the one causing leaks in the tower. Surprised to see each other there, they talk about how they ended up there. Lloyd tells his grandson how Edward is making a huge mistake because the Foundation's real purpose in the exhibition is to sell weapons to Britain's enemies. He shows Ray the armory filled with huge, steam-powered weaponry, one of which is the tractor that smashed into their house the day he was kidnapped. While Ray's grandfather talks about how his father chooses to side with evil, Edward arrives, explaining his philosophy and the real purpose of science, leaving the boy confused as to whom to believe. Persistent in his goal, Lloyd removes one of the steam balls, but as he does so, Alfred shoots him in the leg. He orders Ray to escape with the ball, but he is chased by Jason and the other workers. In order to flee, the boy wraps the ball in his jacket and uses it to zipline into the sewers, allowing him to escape. The next morning, the London exhibition is about to begin, and Ray can be found aboard Stevenson's ship. He talks to David, who tells him of the arrival of the military leaders in the world in the O'Hara Foundation building. Ray then has a conversation with Stevenson regarding what science should really be used for. Somewhat satisfied with the latter's answer, he gives the spherical device to him. Scotland Yard then begins their attack on the Foundation. The moment the soldiers get inside the Foundation's building, they see a steam-powered armor which looks like a robot. Meanwhile, Ray, David, and Stevenson go to the latter's workshop to use the device on his steam-powered tanks, making Ray realize that his father's rival is no better than the rest. At last, the exhibition begins, but outside the building, Scotland Yard is having a difficult time fighting against steam troopers, the latest weapons created by the O'Hara Foundation. It turns out that they are using the exhibition as an opportunity to show the military leaders of the world what their new invention is capable of. With the battle going on between the British military and the steam troopers, the place turns into a war zone in no time, but somewhere a bit far off, Stevenson is calmly drinking tea with an officer, glad that the Queen has already left the exhibition so that he can already deploy his steam tanks. Stunned with the arrival of Stevenson's steam tanks, Simon orders air support to help the ground troops. Ironically, the people inside the Foundation building cheer with what they are witnessing. That is until the vehicles and weapons themselves smash into where they are. Scarlet, clueless of the dangers surrounding her, walks in the middle of the war zone, hoping to find the Queen and talk to Ray. Only after seeing the horrifying effects of the weapons does she realize how dangerous things can be. Meanwhile, David and Ray are having an argument in Stevenson's workshop when an air trooper crash lands there, causing an explosion. Ray uses this chance to get the sphere and escape. He wonders how he can save his grandfather, and an idea strikes him as he sees a flying machine nearby. Inside the tower, Lloyd, tied to a pipe, is arguing with his son, Edward, warning him of the dangers if the latter will proceed with his plans using only 2 steam balls instead of 3. Edward's vanity prevents him from listening. He decides to launch his ultimate invention despite not having enough steam pressure. The outer shell of the Foundation building collapses, and the tower transforms into a flying steam fortress that launches and destroys the structures around and beneath it with its powerful freezing steam. Meanwhile, Ray manages to utilize the power of the 3rd steam ball to create a makeshift aircraft that he uses to board the steam tower. However, when he gets there, an air trooper pursues him. On land, Stevenson and the others try their best to snag the steam tower down before it causes more damage to the rest of London. The air trooper chasing Ray changes his target to Stevenson, but the young steam manages to destroy the man's flying machine. Back in the steam tower's control room, Lloyd arrives, argues with his son, and having left with no choice, shoots Edward in order to stop his madness, but his son disappears in a cloud of smoke. When the smoke finally clears, he's no longer there, and even managed to seal the controls, making it difficult for Ray and his grandpa to bring the fortress to the river, which is at that time in the middle of the city like a time bomb ticking to explode. To regain control of the tower, Ray needs to put the steam ball back in its place in the boiler room. With almost no hope left in sight, Edward re-emerges unscathed because of the metal parts in his body that repelled the bullet. Realizing his mistake, he helps his father and son to steer the steam tower into the river to minimize the damage of the impending explosion. Managing to put at least half of the fortress over the river, the structure begins to fall apart. Edward tells Ray to escape using emergency gear in the control room. He uses it to flee from the fortress together with Scarlet. The fortress explodes, shooting freezing gas everywhere, but thankfully the city is spared from destruction. Scarlet worries about Lloyd and Edward, but Ray is positive that they survive because the era of science has just begun. And right he is, because in the aftermath montage, Ray returns home and becomes a superhero known worldwide because of the jetpack gear from the Tower Fortress. Lloyd, his grandfather, introduces him to electricity before passing away. His father begins a corporation, while Scarlet becomes a famous pilot. A war is still happening though, but the only Zeppelins and paratroopers are being used.